Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. I'm Octavio Villalpando, Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Student Life, and I'll be the moderator for this event. I'm very pleased to welcome you to our WellBeingU Speaker Series featuring Dr. Eva Selhub today, who will speak to us about optimizing resilience and reducing stress. These are indeed very important topics for Cal State LA as we continue to repopulate our university community and emerge from a long and very stressful journey. We invite you to submit your questions to Dr. Selhub via the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen. You can submit your questions as she's presenting and immediately after her presentation, and I will pose those questions on your behalf at the conclusion of her talk. Now, let's begin with a warm welcome by First Lady Debbie Covino, followed by introductory remarks by President Covino. Debbie?
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to see you, and it's great to be here with you today. We're missing seeing everyone, and now that the campus is being repopulated, we'll hopefully be able to be in the same room together again soon. I hope you're all staying well and doing well. Welcome to WellBeingU's Speaker Series at Cal State LA. Before we hear from Dr. Eva Selhub about staying resilient in times of stress, I just want to say thanks to you all for being here via Zoom. You know, the good news is that students, faculty, and staff are back on campus, and so we look forward to the speaker series taking place face-to-face in the spring. You might be aware that what is now called WellBeingU has hosted a great speaker series that has allowed us to have discussions about important subjects such as destigmatizing mental illness, self-care in a time of national crisis, the intersection between social justice and spirituality, suicide prevention, indigenous healing practices, and the way in which technology has reshaped our world, among other topics. Today's webinar is another essential contribution to our effort through the speaker series to contribute to your well-being and to remind you that you are all part of a caring campus community. Before I hand the spotlight over to President Bill Covino to introduce Dr. Selhub, let me say once again, welcome and thank you for giving me the pleasure of opening the valuable discussion that's about to begin. Bill?
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning. Is it morning? No, it's noon. It's afternoon. You know, I mean, it all blends together in my life right now. Thank you for joining us for the WellBeingU Speaker Series. This is a special event for all of us, and we're so glad that you decided to be part of the conversation. The topic is, of course, both timely and universal. Stress touches all of our lives in one way or another. So whether you're a student, a faculty member, a staff member, a community member, we can all benefit from learning ways to optimize our resiliency. Our guest speaker today, Dr. Eva Selhub, is an internationally recognized expert on resiliency and stress reduction. She specializes in helping individuals and organizations improve their health, their well-being, their productivity, their outcomes by becoming part of a culture of resilience. Her presentations merge science with spirit, mind, with body, and provide takeaways that you can actually take away, actionable takeaways. Dr. Selhub taught medicine for 20 years at Harvard Medical School. She also served as medical director for the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital, and she's the author of multiple books: The Love Response, Your Brain on Nature, Your Health Destiny, a stress management handbook, and my favorite title, Resilience for Dummies. That's the first one I'm going to, really. Believing that resilience doesn't arise from a change in a single factor, Dr. Selhub takes a holistic approach, providing the tools we need for transformative change in both our personal and professional lives. Very exciting, and some real substance here that we need to share right now. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Eva Selhub.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this warm welcome. I'm really excited to speak with you. It was going to be in person, but this will do. And I'm just going to start right off and start talking about resilience. And I get this question a lot: what does resilience mean? So you hear a lot of, it's the ability to bounce back, the ability to manage adversity, to be able to bounce back from stress. I'll start with the analogy that I think is the easiest for me to understand, to think about, like how we want to look at resilience. So I think about, I tend to be a klutz. So if something's in front of me, I might knock it over. And let's say there's 2 drinking utensils on my desk. My hand I'm not paying attention, and both drinking utensils fall off my desk and fall to the ground. One is made out of rubber. The other one is made out of glass. They both fall off at the same speed, same distance, do your physics. But what happens, one breaks, the other one bounces. The one that breaks, it might be 1 million pieces, it might be several pieces, but let's even say if it's several pieces and I can glue it back together because it's my favorite drinking utensil in the whole world, it's still never quite going to be the same. Whereas the rubber cup bounces back and it's good as new. So the resilient person, individual, being, object, is one that's able to bounce back into original form. If you can also think about a tree branch that has all the, well, you don't get this in LA, but we get this here in Boston when there's a lot of snow that's on that tree branch, and then that tree branch starts bending, and then the snow might fall off and the tree branch comes back into original position, unchanged. As good as new, as good as it was before. Unlike that broken cup, which is full of, shards of glass, which can either never be put back together, or if it is put back together, it's never quite the same. So resilience is that rubber or that tree branch is able to bounce back to original form despite adversity, despite that stress. And so then if we sort of bring that over into humanness, into ourselves, we say, well, does that happen to us? When we meet adversity, when we fall down, when we have a difficult situation that's thrown at us, some of us break. And when we break, do we get put back together? Are we able then to bounce back into original form? And that means that we're able to stay fit, if you will, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that when life happens to us, that we're able to bounce back. We're able to be as whole as we were before. Now, that is actually something that most human beings can do. Every human being is born resilient. I mean, if you think about it, being born, that's a pretty tough endeavor. Getting through that really small canal and then coming out actually breathing and alive, getting born and making it out of that womb alive is actually a really big deal that we take for granted. And just doing that alone is quite resilient, and being able to make it through these early years and you can make it through being a teenager, that's being quite resilient, and getting to where we are today and getting through life with all the challenges that it throws us, that's being resilient. So our ability to get through life automatically qualifies us as being resilient. Having said that, there's some people that are capable of bouncing back, not only into just even original form, and to be able to keep their quality of life and health and what have you, not only the same, but even better. And you can, an example of that is an athlete who puts their body under undue amount of stress, and then they come out stronger and faster and better. So that's an example of what we call hormesis, which is coming out of adversity even better than you were before. And then there's another part of the population that becomes victimized, become helpless. They literally fall apart and have nervous breakdowns and what have you. And they're like the broken glass that cannot get put back together because of that trauma, because of that adversity. And in psychological terms, we call that post-traumatic stress versus post-traumatic growth. And so we all have the capacity to go one way or another. Some believe that there's some of us that are born resilient, that we're born with that mindset that looks at life as opportunity, that when challenges arise, they get stronger, faster, better. And that some people are born with a more victim-like mindset where things happen and they become stressed by it, traumatized by it, where they literally fall apart and are never quite the same. And neither is right or wrong. It's just sort of, some of us are just genetically prone to looking at life that way and reacting to life that way. But the majority of people, probably over 60, 70% of people, are those who either learn one way or another. In other words, we're kind of even. And when life happens, we either learn to become resilient or more resilient, or we learn what's called learned helplessness. That's Dr. Seligman came up with that terminology, learned helplessness, where we have a series of negative events that happen in our life and we become more and more helpless and more victimized by life circumstances, which cause us to be less and less resilient. And for most of us who can go either way, we have the ability and opportunity to cultivate resilience, to learn it and to grow it. Even if you've developed this victim mindset, this learned helplessness, you have the ability to unlearn it and to cultivate resilience, becoming that, like that athlete, stronger, better, faster, what have you, so that when life does throw you curveballs, you can manage it. So I want to give you a little bit of example of my own life. So even how I got to be where I am today, leaving medicine and doing what I do. And it's sort of it happened, let's see, 1996 or 25 years ago. And I look back now and I think where I was then in the learned helplessness kind of mindset to where I am today, which is in the more resilient mindset, just to show you how we can be, we can grow, this can change. So back in 1996, we had a different virus that was rampant in our lives or in our society, and that was HIV. And I was training at Boston City Hospital, and we had a very, very large population of HIV patients. And I was doing a procedure on one of those patients late at night and using a very big needle, and the needle had gotten into the vein as it needed to, but the patient moved and the needle went into my finger. So I was now exposed very heavily to HIV. And this is 1996, which most of you are too young to know about. But at that time, people were dying of this disease or just suffering greatly. And there really was not much we could do about it, not like it is now. And at that time, I just froze. People say, "Oh, were you scared?" And that wasn't actually what went through my mind at the time that I was punctured with that needle. The first thought was I screwed up, and I felt a lot of shame around what had happened. And can I fix this? And because before, if I ever screwed anything up, or I was a fixer, I just fixed things. I was always capable of fixing things. I was this headstrong person doing residency, and I was going to be working in ICUs and be a pulmonologist. I had my whole career set out. I knew what I wanted to do. And I could fix things, and I couldn't fix this. And when I realized that I couldn't fix it, that's when I started feeling more fear. That's when I started feeling more scared. And when I called the chief resident and I called the attending on call, and they didn't know what to do either until they sort of talked to their colleagues at the NIH, and they said, well, there's this post-exposure prophylactic cocktail, this cocktail of medications you take that ended up being about 14 pills a day for 6 weeks that you take to prevent conversion to HIV. And that's what they put me on. So here I was, 28 years old, healthy, beforehand, getting extremely sick from these 14 toxic medications that I had to take for 6 weeks. And I was a mess. I cried all of the time. I cried because I, thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to suffer. I was suffering from taking all these medications. I cried because somehow, I had created this horrible stress on my family. I owed, hundreds of thousands of dollars on medical school loans, and my parents had co-signed, and they were going to be stuck with my debt because I was never going to be able to work. Now that I was either going to be sick or I was going to die. And the thing that brought me to my knees, that caused me to feel so victimized I could barely breathe, was the thought that I was single and that I was going to die alone, and who's going to love me now? And I just felt worthless. And I felt that way for 6 weeks. And during that 6 weeks, I bargained and bargained. And I said, if there is a God, please let me live. If there is a God, please let this turn out to be okay. And I promise I'll be a nicer person. I'll be a better person. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And I also thought, if I do live, I'm not going to go work in ICUs. I'm going to do something that's good for the world. I'm going to go save lives while people are alive, rather than, they're ready to cross over. And so after 6 weeks, when everything turned out okay, my results came out negative, I did decide to change career. And I was sort of excited to embark on this new journey now that I was okay. But then I just kind of kept getting slapped in the face, if you will. My dog died, then my grandfather died. Somebody was harassing me. My apartment burned down, lost all my possessions, did not have renter's insurance, had to move back home with my parents, and my dad had a heart attack. And this all happened within a 5-month period. Needless to say, I lost my will. I lost my drive. I lost my joy. I said, why me? Why me? Why me? Why do I keep getting knocked down? This isn't fair. What did I do wrong? And I just was sort of a walking zombie. I just did not have the capacity, the energy to smile, to think, to live. I was, looking back, I could say I was clinically depressed at that time. And I walked around like that, like a zombie, probably for about 5 months, until a friend had taken me out to dinner, and she said, we miss you. And somehow, I can't tell you what happened, but I woke up and I thought to myself, I've been walking around feeling like a victim this whole time. And I keep saying, why me? Why me? Why me? As if I'm being punished. And then I thought to myself, you're asking the wrong question. You don't want to be asking, why me? The real question is, why not me? Stuff happens. Nature just as soon lets a forest fire burn as a flower bloom. It's not personal. Life happens. Nature happens. It's not what happens to us. It's how we react to it. All this time, I've been thinking that life is happening to me. But life doesn't happen to me. It happens with me. I co-create the circumstances of my life based on how I react, and based on my attitude, and based on my perception. And somehow, for some reason, the lens with which I'm looking at my life is coming from a lens of self-pity, of victimization, of low self-worth. And if I feel this way, most people feel this way. So that led me to start learning more about all of this. And that's what really catapulted my journey into learning about mindset, to learning about stress, to learning about self-worth and self-love, and all these things that can help people get off medications, become healthier, become happier, and what that's all about. And fast forward 25 years later, all the work that went in understanding and meditating and building up that mindset to one that is no longer victimized. The mindset that says, I'm a co-creator of my life. So if it's raining outside, I can either be miserable that it's raining outside or snowing or it's crappy outside or whatever it is. And I could say, well, it's really gross outside. I don't want to do anything. And I'm just going to stay in and, be miserable. Or I can say, well, it's raining outside. I'm going to put on a raincoat and still go enjoy my life. So in that way, the trajectory, what's going to happen next is up to me. It's still raining outside. But what I do about it is up to me. So we are co-creators of our life. Life doesn't happen to me, it happens with me. And so over that course of the 25 years, I looked at what are the different facets that allows us to have that victor mindset that looks at life and says, yeah, that kind of sucks. I don't like it. It's not this is a hardship. This is a challenge. But given what is, what am I to do? And how do I see myself? And how can I create this as an opportunity for growth and learning? How do I turn this into an opportunity? And so in order to do that, we want to cultivate our physical health. We want to cultivate emotional health and emotional balance, our spiritual connection, our mental toughness, and open-mindedness, to nurture relationships, and to realize who we are as leaders, as our ability to influence others to make this world a better place. And that's what I call the 6 pillars of resilience. And those are the things I learned to work on over the 25 years of all the different facets that allowed me to work towards having that mindset despite what happens. Again, 25 years later, whether it was a pandemic or father being sick or whatever it was, the challenges that life has thrown me, it doesn't mean that I might not get upset by something, but I don't get upset for too long. And I use my skill sets, my 6 pillars that I cultivate, that I keep track of, in order to maintain that mindset that I'll figure this out. Come what may, I'll be okay. Come what may, I'm going to make lemonade out of those lemons. It's not necessarily about saying that the glass is half empty or half full, mind you. It's about recognizing that there's always more water where it came from. So having said that, we want to then look at how do we get there? So we don't want this to take 25 years for you. I'm here to make it shorter, hopefully a couple days, a couple months, or whatever that is, and to help you sort of understand, how do I shift over that mindset? How do I go from looking at this pandemic or look at what's happening and saying it's not fair, I don't like it, this is so hard. And think about whatever it is that you're feeling anxious or stressed about right now. And just, if you think about it, I want you to pay attention to what happens in your body. If you think about, say to yourself, I'm so stressed about this, or I'm anxious about this, or I'm really angry about that. And make that statement and think about that particular situation that causes you to feel that way. And notice what happens to your body, particularly what happens to the breath, what happens to your chest, what's happening to the body. Does it sort of round up? It gets tighter. Maybe your heart rate goes up. That's witnessing your physiology. Your stress response starts going up because your brain is perceiving that you're being threatened by something. And when you're perceiving a threat or a situation that's stressful that you don't have an answer to, remember when I said I couldn't fix it, that's when the fear set in. Then the body and mind contract and we go into a victim mode. And in that victim mode, you go into automated behaviors that will attempt to help you feel better that aren't necessarily good for you. I'll explain all that. But I want you for now to just notice how your body is reacting to this stressful thought. And just notice the contraction. And in that state, know that it's not possible to think clearly. It's not possible to come up with good solutions. It's not possible to have good communication. It's not possible to be really social and connect with other people and have compassion and love. This is a closed down fight or flight, physical stance, emotional stance, spiritual stance. And when you're there, it's very challenging to get out of it. So now what I want you to do is instead, I want you just to think about a situation of awe. So think about perhaps the most beautiful sunset or sunrise you've ever seen. And you can see some beautiful ones out on the West Coast where you are. Your favorite place out in nature. Or maybe you're gazing out at the ocean and watching the sun shine on the water, those tiny sparkles of light that dance upon the water. Or maybe you're gazing into the eyes of somebody you adore, or watching a hawk or an eagle soar in the sky. It's a situation of awe, whatever comes to mind. And just let yourself think about that awesome situation, the beauty of nature, or maybe even watching a child walk for the first time, as if you're gazing at a miracle. And so think about that for a moment. And notice what happens to you. Notice what happens to your body. Notice what happens to your breath. What even happens to your mind. You might notice a sense of openness and relaxation. I don't think you've probably seen a depressed person walking around like this. But you have a sensation of openness and expansiveness. And when that happens, the reward neurons in your brain, the part of your brain that starts believing in possibilities, opens. we start thinking, oh, that's possible. I'm possible, instead of I'm not possible. And that's the experience of love that opens us up to a bigger reality. And when we're in that state, when you're in the state of a bigger reality, of a bigger mind, we say, yeah, that's possible. I can figure this out. Or you might say, that's actually not that big of a deal. I'm not that stressed about that. I'm making mountains out of molehills. And there's a reason for that, which I'll get to. So that's just an example of being in that stress response versus what I call the love response, of being in an open state. And we have the ability to control that physiological state, which then helps us change the mindset. So in order to really get a grasp of all this, to understand what resilience is, how we cultivate resilience, how we access those 6 pillars of resilience, but the thing is that we want to actually understand stress. So most people, I think everybody at some point in the day probably has said, I'm stressed, or I'm experiencing stress, or something of that nature. And, unfortunately, stress has gotten a really bad rap, because the truth of the matter is without stress, we'd all be dead. So by definition, stress is simply when there is a situation of lack, when there's something that's out of balance. So for any of you who've taken biology or remember biology, you might remember the word homeostasis, that every living organism wants to live in homeostasis, in a state of balance. We all want to get into a state of balance. Now, because we live in a dynamic universe and we are dynamic living beings, it means everything is constantly changing. So the ability to stay in a steady state, in one state of balance all the time, is impossible. So because life and the universe is constantly changing, we as human beings, as living organisms, need to keep up with that change. We need to adapt to that change. So every time there's an imbalance, it's called stress. So that imbalance could be a drop in your blood sugar, or hunger, or being cold. It could be that you are feeling uncomfortable. So for instance, you might be able to sit still for a certain amount of time, but at some point, you won't be able to sit still anymore. Your sensory signals from, let's say, your right buttocks are going to tell your brain that it's about to atrophy, or it's starting to become numb. So it signals your brain to then tell your body to shift positions. And then you shift positions and you're comfortable again. So that's how it works. You're hungry. Your brain picks up that you're hungry. It motivates the action of going to get some food and eating it. And you eat the food, and now you're no longer hungry. You're cold. Your brain picks up that your temperature has dropped. It then motivates the action that has been learned of what to do, which is go put something on or go turn up the thermostat so that you fix the problem. And now your body temperature has come back into normal. So that's how the entire system, the human system, well, every living organism works that way, is that the system tries to be in a state of balance. The balance is not maintained because that's just what happens. It's part of life. Then the brain gets signaled that there is a problem. And then through the course of your lifetime, you've developed a database of what to do in any given situation. So you didn't know any of this when you were an infant. You had some ability to self-regulate, but not much. You didn't know that what you were feeling was hungry, and you didn't know what you were feeling was being tired. You learned that later, and you also learned what to do about it through the actions of others. So we learn about ourselves. We learn about what we need according to what happens in our early life programming. And as our brain is developing, it's creating that database of what to do and how to behave in order to feel better. So everything we do, every habit that you've created, walking, talking, tying your shoes, cooking, how you personify yourself as the strong one or the weak one or the smart one, or whatever that is, those are all labels that you created over time that helps you feel better. That's just how we're designed. We're designed to seek relief. We're designed to find comfort. So all our actions are based in finding that relief to get into that place of balance. And because you don't want to have to think about how to tie your shoes as if for the first time, your brain creates this database that you can always go to, so you can automatically go into these actions and habits so that you can cope and stay alive. And so what happens is that we develop coping habits. And some of them are adaptive coping habits, like I'm hungry, I eat. That's an adaptive coping habit because it's taking care of my blood sugar. And then there's maladaptive coping habits, like I'm anxious and I eat. So what is happening there? Well, the eating is calming my nerves down a bit so that I can cope and keep going, but it's actually not what I actually need because I'm not hungry. I'm maybe putting in calories I don't need. I'm probably eating comfort food that's quite inflammatory. So that's creating stress for other things that are happening for me. And ultimately, I'm not actually taking care of why I'm anxious. I'm just numbing it so that I can cope. That's what's called maladaptive coping. And we've all developed both habits through our lifetime because our brain is quite small. You know, it wasn't really developed. And for many of you, it's not even fully developed yet, not into your late 20s. And so that ability to know and judge and rationalize and use intellect and have that higher brain capability, we don't have that as the template is being formed that then informs our behaviors and actions going forward. So we find ourselves today not aware of the habits and choices that we make that we're doing in order to cope with stress. Now, the thing about stress is that for the most part, your brain looks at stress, like I said, hunger or cold or uncomfortable position, or even harder challenges like a test or an exam. So there's some things that we've gone through our life in our past, and we've gone through these experiences and we've seen it before. We've said, yeah, I can handle this. Like, for instance, a common cold, right? The body has seen it before. We think, oh, well, that's a virus I've seen before. I can handle it, no problem. And then you take a new challenge that it hasn't seen before and it meets it with fear and it can't handle it, like COVID. The human body has never seen COVID before. So some bodies can handle it, some bodies can't. We don't know which is which, but that's true about life. So there's some people that look at having to take an exam as no problem because they've always excelled at test taking, and other people who've in their past failed at test taking. So every time they anticipate the notion of taking a test, they go into fight or flight. And so what happens in the brain is that the brain doesn't distinguish between a real threat or an imagined threat. It doesn't distinguish between one thing and another. To the brain, it's either a manageable stress, I can handle it, I've seen this before, and therefore I'll be able to do it again. I am enough, I have enough, and I project in the future that I will be. Or it's deemed as a threat, as an unmanageable stress. I've either never seen this before and I don't know what to do, or I've seen this before and I've failed and I'm going to fail again. So it's a victim mindset. And so again, the brain does not distinguish between real or imagined. It's still, we guess we haven't been around that long for the brain to evolve from the times when our ancestors lived in the wilderness and literally were threatened daily. Their lives were being threatened. So as long as the brain perceives a stress to be unmanageable, then it perceives it like the saber-toothed tiger is chasing you. It's not really any different. So for that reason, it's important to actually figure out, what is my mindset? Am I looking at this as a manageable threat or stress? Or am I looking at this as something that's not manageable, that's a threat to me? Because that's actually going to then affect how my brain is perceiving my world and myself, and then how my physiology is responding to that. And when my physiology responds in a certain way, it's then going to provoke certain behaviors. And those behaviors are either going to be adaptive or maladaptive. And those maladaptive behaviors are going to create a vicious cycle because A, they're not good for me. And so they're going to create more stress. And I'm also probably going to have other guilt or negative feelings about myself because I'm doing something that isn't good for me, and so on and so forth, making me feel more victimized and miserable or whatever that is. So let's just actually look at that stress response so it'll make more sense as to what I mean. So here's an example. Imagine you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or a lion. Now, if you think about that, right? Or we've heard cases of being stalked by the jaguar, right? This person's hiking and they're being stalked by a jaguar. So what would you do? How would that make you feel, right? Right? Is it a good time to take a nap? No way, right? You got to stay alert and aroused and hypervigilant. So literally adrenaline, cortisol, which are the stress hormones, are coursing through the body and through the brain to keep you hyper alert, hyper aroused, and hypervigilant. Is it a good time to forage for food? It's not a good time to do that either. So what happens is the blood flow to the gut is decreased. The blood vessels are constricted. There's slowing down of the movement of the colon, or called peristalsis, or the esophagus might start contracting to deter one from eating. It's not a good time to reproduce either. So the hormones are going to get shut down. Let's see. It's not a good time to relax, is it? You want your muscles to be able to fight like mad or run like heck. So what's going to happen is automatically the neck will stiffen, the lower back will stiffen, the shoulders will come up, the jaw comes forward, so you can look scary and mean, so that you can also pounce, right? Fight or fly. So that gives you the opportunity to get away. The blood flow is going to increase to those larger muscle groups and to the brain so that you can actually get the heck out of there. But it's going to move away from your fingers and toes because you don't need fine motor skills to fight like mad and run like heck. So that's going to cause what you'll see is an increase in blood pressure because there will be constriction in the outside. And the heart rate's going to go up because it needs to be pumping all this energy. You're going to get this energy, by the way, from the breakdown of resources. The breakdown of your liver, from the sugar in your liver, the glucose in your liver, the breakdown of fats, from the breakdown of muscles, and the breakdown of bones. All those nutrients are now going to be able to go through the blood, the system, to be able to get to the brain and the larger muscle groups so that you can fight like mad and run like hell. And that includes also oxygen. So you're going to breathe faster. That's what's also going to happen is that your immune system is going to get revved up to protect you. So what's going to happen is, in case you get cut or wounded, you don't want that wound to bleed or to hemorrhage or to get infected. So the white blood cells are marginating and waiting for a signal to start an inflammatory reaction. And the red blood cells are waiting for a signal whether they need to clot so that you don't bleed to death and hemorrhage. So to summarize, that stress response is you have the increased heart rate and blood pressure, increased respiratory rate, increased catabolism as opposed to metabolism, which is breakdown of your body's resources for energy. You have increase in muscle tension, increased arousal so that you can't sleep, can't eat, can't reproduce. And you're also not going to be social because it's not a good time to go hugging that saber-toothed tiger. You need to actually be in a negative mood. So serotonin and dopamine, those happy chemicals, are going to drop. It's also not a good time to think about how to do your taxes or prepare for studying for an exam. So what happens is the signals are sent from that lower lizard brain to higher brain centers, shutting it down. It's not a good time to think logically. It's not a good time to actually think about the big picture. I'm like a horse with blinders. I've got to go from point A to point B. So that's why I said when we're in a negative state, in that victimized state, we don't think clearly, we don't socialize well, we don't access resources. We're just trying to get from point A to point B. And that's what happens when the brain perceives that you're under threat, when it's a situation that isn't manageable. If the brain perceives it's a situation that's manageable, that response is not as heightened. Not only that, it's controlled. So normally that response is beneficial as long as it's short-lived. So that response is always stimulated in order to motivate action. The minute the brain perceives that the situation has been taken care of, like you've shifted positions and now you're comfortable, the system will put out that stress response. It's a system of containment that everything comes back down to zero, comes back to balance. But if that cannot be contained, for instance, you have pain in your hip and you can't find a comfortable position, that stress response will continue firing. It will also fire if you continue to anticipate something that hasn't happened yet. So every time you project into the future, when you worry, by definition, worry is an unmanageable stress because you're worrying about it because you can't come up with a solution. So every time you worry, that's an unmanageable stress. The brain, it's like you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. So are you going to get a good night's sleep if you go to bed with worries? Unlikely. Not going to happen. You're not going to get restful sleep. So every time you think about I'm not enough or you feel insecure, that's an unmanageable stress because it's nothing you can do about it, right? It's not manageable if I'm insecure and I don't feel good enough. So what happens is that people are feeling uncomfortable within themselves for different reasons. They may or may not access that consciously or through their intellect. They just know they don't feel good, or they just feel insecure, or they just feel nervous and they feel stressed. And whatever it is they're feeling is causing a stimulation of that stress response. And that stress response will then stimulate actions and behaviors that you've used your entire life to cope, to feel better. Whether that's eating a tub of ice cream, or drinking a bunch of alcohol, or working harder and being a workaholic, or whatever it is that you do that you feel gives you value and helps you feel like you're more in control. I hope I'm making sense because that's what that vicious cycle is. And so I'm here to tell you that you have the ability to change all of that. That's just how most of us are. And the key to all of this is self-awareness, is that practice of mindfulness. And so what we want to do is just start to pay attention. First of all, you have this information, and all of this is in all of my books, by the way. And I'm happy to, there's all kinds of things on my website, and I talk about this on YouTube. So anything that you need answers to, I'm happy to help you with that. And I'll take questions at the end. But remember that these are all normal mechanisms that happen in our human body and our human mind. What we have the opportunity to do now is to say, hold on a minute. I don't have to be this robot. I don't have to just keep functioning on rote and do what these automated behavior that I've been doing my whole life. I can change this. Just like you did in the beginning exercise, where I had you think about the stressful situation and then think about a situation of awe and love. You could see how you had that ability to change your physiology and then change the mindset. So what happens is that everything's interconnected. When that stress response is on overactive mode and the brain is on fear mode, it's very hard to get out of that. When we go into that negative emotional cycle, it's very difficult to get out of that. And you're not going to think your way out of it. But if you change the physiology, this is where meditation comes in. You're taking deep breaths. That deep breath alone will start telling the brain, I'm okay, I'm safe. And that's then going to lower that stress response and open up the mind. So now you have access to that intellect. You have access to the knowledge base. You have access to heart-based activities that allow you to socialize and ask for help. You have access to compassion. You don't have access to that when you're in the fight or flight response. So let's do an example of this, what I'm talking about in self-awareness. And we did that example in the beginning, and we're going to just do that again. So if you will, it might be easier to close your eyes so that you can just focus on your body. And what I'd like you to do is scan your body from the top of your head all the way down to the bottom of your feet. And all you're doing is just taking note. This is what we call non-judgmental observation of what is, or practice of mindfulness. We're just noticing where you're holding your attention. Does this area feel open or closed, relaxed or tight, heavy or light? Starting from the top of your head, moving down into your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, your back, your arms, your chest, your abdomen, your legs. Paying attention to the breath. Just notice if it's smooth or tight. There's no right and there's no wrong, but this is just observation. What am I feeling right now? And then I want you to think about a stressful situation again, or something that causes you to feel anxiety or anger or frustration, whatever it may be, and let it come up. And as you think about it, notice what you feel. Notice where the tension arises now that you're familiar with the stress response. Notice where you feel your tension, if you even feel it in your mind. The thoughts. Just notice. And then you can just tell yourself to pause. Just take a pause. slow down. Honoring the way you feel. Focus on the breath. Direct your focus to the breath as you breathe in. So move away from your thoughts. You might say thinking, 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 and bring your focus to your breath. And then as you breathe in, count to yourself 1, 2, 3. And then as you breathe out, count to yourself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe in, count to 3. Breathe out, count to 6. Letting the exhalation be longer than the inhalation, which gives your lungs the opportunity to release all that air, all that tension. So you imagine that when you exhale, you're just letting everything go for now. You're releasing the thoughts in your mind, the tension in your body, the situation at hand. Imagine that you're releasing it out into the earth, into the clouds, or down a river. You're just, for now, releasing your grip and just letting go as you exhale, counting to 6. And as you inhale the breath of life. You inhale peace. Just allowing peace, the breath of life, to fill your lungs, to fill your heart, to fill your body. Breathing out, letting go of everything else. You might want to say to yourself, breathing in peace, letting go of everything else. Breathing in peace, letting go of everything else. Breathing in peace, letting go of everything else. And as you breathe in, you can imagine you're breathing in a golden or divine light that is full of love and peace. And with every breath that you breathe in, that light fills your heart. Like there's a glow filling your heart with every breath. The sun shining inside of your heart with every breath. As you exhale, you let go of everything else. Breathing in divine light and love and peace, letting go of everything else. So with every breath, your heart is softening and opening like the flower that it is to the breath of life. Your heart is open to the breath of life as you let go of everything else. The light inside of your heart shining out, connecting with other hearts to the heart of the universe, and the knowing that there is a divine solution to all things. Breathing in divine light, love, and peace, letting go of everything else. And just using now the opportunity to listen to your body, to what you need, and just making the decision to take care of yourself. Whatever it is you need in order to be able to handle whatever it is you need to do. Having love and compassion, taking care of yourself. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. There. So hopefully you'll be able to let me know how that went for you. We can do this now or we can do it later when we take questions. But for most of you, you might have noticed, again, that feeling of contraction versus the feeling of expansion. And I'm curious also how you feel about that stressful situation now. What I did was I took you through several different exercises that you can use, this exercise or any other, or each one of them singularly. The key here is to pause, to slow down, not keep doing what we always have done, to honor the way we feel, not judgmentally, in that mindfulness practice, to witness what we're feeling, pay attention to where we're holding that tension. And then we can divert our attention away from the thoughts that keep us in the loop in that negative mindset to something that we can control, which is our breath. So the first skill was in 3 out 6 breath. There's all different kinds of breath focuses. A nice one is also the box breath, which is 4 pause, 4 pause, 4 pause, 4 pause, which I can, if we have time, I can show that to you. But I just showed you the in 3 out 6, which longer exhalation stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which again tells your mind that you're okay. The other one was just using a mantra like in peace, out tension, or letting go of everything else. And the other one was also using the visualization of using light and love to open the heart. So a guided visualization, guided meditation. Those are all just different examples of ways that we can turn off the stress response, enhance the feeling of connectivity and love, opening up the dopaminergic reward system, the lateralization of the brain that allows us to then look at something with openness and the knowing that this is possible versus this is impossible. And that tricks us into either seeing something and saying, yeah, I can handle this. It's even it's just reducing that emotional charge that allows us to get there. And oftentimes we think, I don't even know why I'm so upset about this. I don't really care anymore. We want to get to a place where we can care without caring, where we can be objective. And these are just different techniques that we can do. When you do these techniques for 10 to 20 minutes, it actually counts as a meditation. And that meditation, if you do that daily, has a carryover effect that allows you to actually stay that way during times of stress, that you don't fall into that negative emotional mindset that easily. So it's something that you can do as a daily practice, or you can do it in the moment-to-moment awareness of when you're feeling a certain way and you want to change that. What's also what I did in there was give you the mantras of I'm inhaling peace, love, and divine light, which again changes that belief system from I'm alone and I'm not enough and I don't have enough to one that I am. And all those skill sets, those techniques are again shifting the mindset, shifting the physiology, so I can get into that resilient person that I am, that I don't have access to when I go into victim mindset. And that last piece of that was the listening and deciding to take care of myself. So the self-awareness is important. What's also important is creating the infrastructure that supports you to thrive versus dive. So taking care of oneself means what are the things that fuel me to be at my best? What fuels me to be at my best is the food, the fuel that I put in my body, the fuel that I give myself that comes in the form of restful sleep, the fuel that I give myself in the form of fitness or exercise and movement, or my happy and loving relationships and social support, in the connection with the community, in finding purpose and passion, in having humor and joy. And that's what I call the infrastructure. And in helping people sort of look at what are the things that I'm doing in my life or not doing in my life that support me to thrive or either causing me to die. And sometimes you say, well, this is a situation that yesterday I wasn't worried about at all. What's the difference? Well, the difference is I'm sleep deprived. So those are the things that we want to look at. Not only are what are the underlying belief of the victimization that I have the opportunity to change, but also what is happening in my life that is causing me to feel more victimized. Like I might feel more victimized because I've had less to sleep. I feel more victimized because I ate food that is giving me stomach pain. So every time you have a certain stress that's unmanageable, that can sort of flip you into a negative mood. And that negative mood can then flip you into that limited negative mindset. So again, there's all these things that sort of feed on each other. The very first step, the most important thing to do is to just be aware, non-judgmentally aware. It's important to understand there's never a good and there's never a bad. It just is. You're human. It's like we are human. This is just how we've survived. This is who we are. And to say, okay, I'm in my victim mindset or I'm in my victor mindset. Either keep going or stop, slow down, honor the way I feel. Inhale, don't forget to exhale. Listen, and let me decide what I want to do going forward. Do I want to decide to continue in this victim mindset, or do I want to change into my resilient mindset? That's a mnemonic. It's called the SHIELD. Easy to remember, SHIELD. Slow down, honor, inhale, don't forget to exhale, listen, and decide. So that is actually the mnemonic. It's a visualization that I utilize with people, that if we have time, I will do that with you, of imagining sort of light that comes down. I also have that available on YouTube for people to follow through with. But just as a sort of a mnemonic to remember as you go through your life, is pay attention to how you feel. Pay attention to your body signals. Your body whispers before it screams. It's letting you know when you're going down. So listen to it. You may not have the ability to change what's happening around you, but you have the ability to change yourself, to change your mindset, to look at what life is bringing to you and say, how can I be the co-creator of my life? And you do that by slowing down. You do that by breathing. You do that with engaging with spirituality, with love and with light, with gratitude, with positivity that helps you open your heart and open your mind to possibility. When you get there, then life becomes opportunity rather than a detriment. So I think I'm at a point where I'm supposed to be taking questions. If not, I can keep going. You guys let me know where I am right now. I have 3 minutes. Okay, so I don't have my glasses, so I think that was 3 minutes. Is that correct? 3 minutes. Okay, so what I'm just going to do with you, I'd like to just show you how to do the shield. So the shield was a technique that I came up with probably 2005, 2004. It's in the Love Response. But like I said, there's a meditation available on YouTube. And I'm just going to run you through it quickly, if you will. It's really a lovely meditation. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. And just imagine that you're calling out for a shield to help you at any point in your life. And when you do so, you'll start to feel or see golden rays of beautiful divine light shining down from the heavens above, from the sun above, perhaps. These are golden rays of light that are full of unconditional love, grace, and wisdom that are shining down and surrounding you in a shield of love and grace and protection, letting you know that you're safe and reminding you to slow down and honor the way you feel. To inhale as deeply as you can and exhale as completely as you can. Counting, if you wish, to 3 as you breathe in. 1, 2, 3, and 6 as you breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing in as deeply as you can, exhaling as completely as you can, just letting go again of any tension or thoughts. If you find yourself thinking, just say thinking, 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 and just let everything float away with your breath. Breathing in the breath of life, breathing out, letting go of everything else. Allowing the mind and body to quiet so that you can listen. In what way is the situation leading you to believe that you're not enough and don't have enough? And make the decision to change that mindset. Decide to be resilient by saying silently to yourself, I am enough, I have all that I need, come what may, I have all that I need. I am enough, I have all that I need, come what may, I have all that I need. As you say those words, the light will respond by shining into your mind and filling your mind with wisdom, shining down your spine and your back, into all the parts of your face and your chest, your abdomen, all your internal organs, your arms and your legs. I am enough, I have all that I need, come what may, I have all that I need. This divine light and moving into every cell of your body, healing every part of you, filling you with light and with love, until it begins to shine in every part of you and overflow, coming out of your pores, opening your heart, connecting your heart to other hearts, to infinite possibilities, to divine life, love, and infinite intelligence, to the knowing that you have what you need. I am enough, I have enough, I have all that I need, come what may, I have all that I need. So just notice how you feel now. You're surrounded by light, filled with light, shining light connected to it. You have all that you need, come what may. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Okay. Hopefully you're feeling good and ready to go. Let's see. How do I know? Oh,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Selhub. I, for a bit there, forgot I was at the office. It was so relaxing. Thank you so much for your presentation. And I am so glad we recorded your presentation, because you've left us with so many different resources. And I, for one, will be spending a lot of time on your website looking for additional resources. You've spoken to many of the salient issues we all confront, but the most important message for me is the reminder that it's kind of the natural state of being for the human mind is that of a state of resiliency. So thank you very much for your comments today. As a reminder, all of our audience is invited to submit questions through the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen. And let me now begin to turn to some of the questions that have been submitted. The first question has to do with stress. How do I know if the stress I'm experiencing is normal?
well, all stress is normal. Hopefully, let's just start with if you feel that when if your emotional response is high, the negative emotional response is high, then you're looking at stress that you're perceiving is not manageable. So remember, all stress is normal. It's not an abnormal, okay? But we want to avoid labeling negatively. There's nothing good, there's nothing bad. It's just knowing what it is, right? So when I perceive there's a challenge at hand that's not manageable, like a worry, or I'm having anxiety, or I'm feeling upset, or I'm feeling angry, and it's creating nervousness or whatever that is, then we can take that as that's a stress that my brain is perceiving as not manageable. If it's a stress, I say, oh, well, this is stressful, but I got it. You know, this is a challenge that I can just reckon with. Then it's something very different. Then I just reckon with it. So we don't want to look at whether stress is normal or not. We want to look at its level of manageability. And I'm going to give you an example here just to show you just the play on words and how that affects your physiology. So if everybody can do this with me, is again, pay attention to your, specifically maybe your chest, your gut, and say to yourself, I'm stressed about something, whatever, you guys decide whatever it is, but just say that sentence, I'm stressed about whatever, blank. And notice how your gut reacts in your chest. Just notice, probably doesn't feel so good. And in your brain's kind of saying, oh, that sucks. It doesn't feel really manageable. I don't know what to do. It's really stressful. Just using the word I'm stressed. Now take that exact same sentence and say, I'm worried. I'm worried about the situation. And just use the word worried instead of I'm stressed. And notice how that causes you to feel. What kind of physiological or physical reaction do you have to that? And how does your brain respond to that? I'm worried. Probably still not so good. And then switch that sentence to I'm concerned. I'm concerned. Now what happens? Now all of a sudden it's a little bit more manageable. I've turned a mountain into a molehill. Still a molehill, still have to get over it, but it's not a mountain. So we're just observing. So when you say something isn't normal, you're saying that something is abnormal. Now, can I fix something that's abnormal? No. You're labeling something into something that's now become immobile, not fixable, not changeable. So we want to watch our words. Rather than saying I'm stressed, say I'm challenged, right? I'm challenged. Or something, rather than saying that's so hard. Oh, God, it's going to be so hard. Well, that feels like a mountain. Well, if I'd say, well, that's challenging, now it's something to be worked with, right? So it's not about not being normal, it's about the levels of manageability. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Selhub. And another question. Can you comment on how being more at peace and grounded within can help us make positive change in the world?
Absolutely. Such a good question. Thank you for asking. All these questions are good. So when, again, if you think about the exercises I've put you through, when you're in a negative place, you're victimized. It's kind of like you're drowning. And if you're drowning, you're not really going to be able to help anyone else. You're really just trying to save your own life. And in so doing of saving your own life, you might try to hold on to something and you end up holding on to someone and you pull them down with you. So when we're in a victimized state, we don't make good decisions. We can't really access compassion and empathy. Everything we're doing is an attempt to try to feel better ourselves. So usually our actions are quite selfish. When we take care of ourselves, our cup runneth over, right? When we are balanced and at peace, we don't have an attachment to what happens in the world. I want to give you an example. When I first started getting into this work, I was working with a spiritual healer, a Sufi leader, and I said to her, I walk around with pain in my heart all of the time. I constantly see all this suffering and I feel helpless and I don't have enough in me to help people and I just feel horrible and it just makes me go eat. And I just like go home and stuff myself with food. I just can't handle all this suffering. How do I handle this pain in my heart so I can be more helpful? And she said, you want your heart to be large enough to hold space for it. You don't try to fix it. You just allow your heart to be large enough to hold space for it. In order to do that, you have to find your peace. So it's not about fixing the world. It's about our cup being able to runneth over so that we can shine our light so that other people can find their light. And if you're in darkness, everybody else stays in darkness. So finding your peace and being grounded is a way for you to discover that you are a divine being having a human experience. It's a way for you to discover your light. And when you shine your light, you are then capable of shining your light for others to see, to feel, to breathe, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. Another question asks, it seems to me that we're better off with a victor mindset than with a victim mindset. But is one mindset better than the other?
There we go, comparing good or bad. How about we just don't go there? Let's just say one is one and one is another. Which do you choose? So in a victim mindset, you will suffer and likely will create more suffering for other people because you're victimized. And woe is me and why me and it's not fair. And then we lash out or we take from others or we feel self-pity and we go into numbing behaviors. And it's usually behavior follows mindset. So in that victim mindset and limited beliefs is just what it is. It's human to feel that way. Our automated way of thinking, because we grew up where we evolved in very harsh environment, was to hold on to the negative so that we could then remember it and be able to exist. But we don't actually need to think that way anymore. And so it's neither good nor bad. Again, I don't like to use that language. It just is or isn't. And it's what you choose. Do I want to choose to live in joy and love and shine my light? Or do I want to choose to live in suffering and darkness? It's just my choice. Neither is one is good or bad or right or wrong. It's what you want to be. It's what do you want? Do you want to suffer? Because we create our own suffering. Life is going to be hard. Life is going to throw us challenges. Nature, like I said, just as soon lets a forest fire burn or a flower bloom. It's up to us to look for opportunity and find gratitude. And if we don't, that's okay. I mean, it's human, but it's your choice.
Thank you. In periods of time when extra stress is inevitable, like midterms or finals, how can I prepare so I don't slide into unhealthy coping behaviors?
It's another really good question. So one way to prepare is to get into the habit, right? Get into a habit before it happens. And think about this. People think about discipline and they think that it's about being rigid. Think about discipline as self-love. If I loved myself, really, really loved myself, what would I do, right? I would want my body to get the best sleep. I would want my body to get the best nutrition, the best love, the best support, and that sort of thing. So you want to get into the habit of looking at life as formats of fuel. What fuels me to thrive on a regular basis? So get into the habit of, maybe having a short meditation practice where you meditate for 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes before you go to bed. Get into the habit of being physically active, whatever that looks like to you. Get into the habit of coming up with routine where you can be rigorous and study for a certain amount of hours and then go out and play for a couple of hours. So find a routine that works for you so that when it comes to, the added stress, you up the ante. You say, okay, now I'm going to make sure I get enough sleep. I'm going to make sure that I regularly move my body. So what happens is people say, well, this is more important than me. Whatever it is that I've got to get done is going to prove my value, like getting a good grade in an exam or whatever it is. And people keep doing that for life. This is why I work with, executives now who are, suffering from all kinds of health issues because they don't know how to create that balance. And so nothing is more important than you. Nothing. No exam, no person, no relationship, nothing, because you're no good when you're sick or dead or depressed. So the question is, what supports me to thrive so that my cup runneth over, so that I have the brain power, the physical power to do what I need to do? So it may be that when it comes to exams and things like that, you up the ante. You take more time to sleep. You take more time to make sure that you exercise. Or you might say, I'm going to limit how much of that I'm going to do, but I'm still going to do it because I need it. I need it to fuel myself. Think of when you're taking these exams as you're taking a really long drive and you need to put more fuel in your tank. So what kind of fuel do I put in my tank that helps me be joyous, helps me feel more powerful, helps me feel more energized? And you don't want it to be coming from external resources like drugs or caffeine and things like that. You want it to be true, because otherwise it's going to be maladaptive coping and it's going to hurt you in the end. So everyone's got something different that really works for them. Like I say, I work with really successful, busy people. So we find a way to integrate it into lives. So a really good thing to do is you sort of set your timer, and every hour in the hour, you just take 10 deep breaths, or you do the shield or something of that nature. You practice mindfulness. You get outdoors and do a walk for 10, 20 minutes. There's different things that you can incorporate. You make sure that you put healthy food into your body so that you don't go into this inflammatory cycle and fluffy brain, so that when you're done, you feel good. You haven't burnt out.
Thank you. Another question.
Octavio, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So here's a heavy one, okay? Especially pertinent to the sort of context of this university and the times that we're in. What do we say to folks who reject the idea that they're making choices when they self-victimize, and instead say that there's a lot of evidence that they are part of a group or part of a group of individuals who are victims of racism and racial violence? Now, that's a really current issue, right? And we've been through the George Floyd killings, and that's affected the community at Cal State LA in a big way, right? So there will be some among our students or faculty or staff, who will say, that doesn't look like a situation that I can address by changing choices. It looks like a real social justice situation that has to be addressed in other ways that may be painful and may be very stressful for me to do. So how do you talk to someone like that?
I think it's a very, very good question. And we do work with language, but we also want to recognize the situation at hand. So how do we say that I'm in a victimized state, but I'm not a victim, right? So the fact that this group has been persecuted, has been, raped, pillaged, whatever. I mean, through hundreds, thousands of years, what have you. The plight is true. The plight that they have been victim to. So again, we want to, for me, it's word choices. That yes, you have been a victim to atrocities, abuse, and poor behaviors by others. 100% true. Are you a victim? So that's the personal choice. Am I personally a victim? Do I see myself as a victim, or do I see myself as a victor despite the atrocity that's happening to me or that has happened to me? Does it make what's happened to me? It doesn't negate what's happened. And that's where the language is, you want to be cognizant, compassionate, and empathic around. The making the choice is about how I see myself in this situation that is really, really horrible. It's not saying that the situation isn't horrible. It's not saying that the situation is okay. It's not condoning it. It's actually saying that, yes, I've been put into a victimized state as a result of this situation. However, I do not see myself as a victim. I will rise. That's the difference between fear and courage. Courage is the experience of stress with an open heart, with purpose, with passion, with belief. It's the belief that I have the capacity to handle this, the belief that I will rise. That's the difference, right? It's not about negating the negativity of the situation. It's not about saying, no, you as a culture, as a group have been, not saying that they have not been put in a victimized state. That is all true. But are you personally a victim is what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you. A somewhat related question asks, how do you comfort or support a loved one, especially a teen, dealing with anxiety, depression, and anger issues without sounding condescending or having them feel gaslighted?
So the question that you want to ask yourself is, am I trying to fix this? Because, we gaslight when we're trying to make somebody something they're not, which makes them feel worse. And this is what I was talking about, of allowing your heart to be large enough to hold space for them to go through what they need to go through. So we have compassion for their plight. It's hard to be a teenager. It's so hard. Do not want to do that again. Thank you very much. And my teen years were not easy, so I get that. But what happens is we want to fix other people because their discomfort makes us uncomfortable. So remember, our desire to act comes from our own need to feel better. So take care of yourself, find your light, shine your light so they can find theirs. Be supportive, be loving, hold space, understand, encourage, don't worry. I used to tell, when I changed my work over from a clinical practice to what I'm doing now, like I was in my 40s and my parents were, they're like, you're the poorest doctor we know, and they kept saying, we're worried about you. And I said, you know what, that's really not helpful. Because what you're telling me by worrying about me is telling me that you don't believe in my capability of rising to the occasion. And you're not also believing in yourself and what you've taught me. What I need is a cheerleader right now, or someone who's going to support me and believe in my capability of getting through this. So think about that when you're supporting someone else, is what do you want for them and what do you want for yourself? And hold that belief for them. Hold them in a state of light. I also find that using your imagination, imagining that you're sending angels or proxies of yourself or light to somebody helps you feel like you're doing something, but it also has sort of a positive affect as opposed to that negative one of worry, anxiety, of trying to fix somebody so that you can feel better. Everybody's got to do stuff in their own time.
Thank you. A very candid question from one of our participants. How would you suggest handling stress that comes from within your living environment, such as a toxic family member at home?
Good question. And you can't get away from them, right? It's a really, really good question, and unfortunately, extremely common. And so again, this is about taking care of yourself. So one of the key factors with toxic relationships or toxic family members is not engaging. So what happens is triggers get triggered and triggered and triggered. So the key for you, like the shield is a wonderful tool to use. And like I said, I encourage you to go to my YouTube, look up shield, and the meditation is right there. It's all free. Learn to do different guided meditations, visualizations, techniques that allow you to shield yourself and take care of yourself and remove yourself from that situation, even just mentally or energetically, and create a barrier, and then don't engage with that toxicity as best you can, and find ways to support yourself in ways that find resources, love, support outside of the home as much as you can. Move out as soon as you can, of course, but use whatever resources you have to find support. Don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel that you have to put up with this. Reach out to counselors, reach out to friends, reach out to other forms of support. If that situation is toxic and unhealthy for you, find a way to leave that situation. And if you can't, find a way to not engage. The less you engage with whatever narcissism and toxicity that family member is exposing you to, the less you engage with it, the less it's going to affect you, and you're not going to care. The key is to care without caring. And there's just, if you have a therapist or a coach or somebody that you can work with, I highly recommend that. Give you more skill sets. Take care of you.
We have one final question, and I think it goes back to your previous answer a couple of answers ago. It is having to do with victimization. And this person says, I am not a victim, but I am a traumatized person who often cannot choose my body's response to new trauma that is going on. I am absolutely courageous to go out every single day.
Agreed. I just got chills. Thank you for that. By the way, nobody really has control over their physiological responses. It's like trying to stop a shiver when it's cold outside. Your body has a memory of its own. And this is what people think. They think that their thinking is really actually maneuvering them through the world, and that's actually not true. It's the body picks up signals first, and then the brain responds and then makes a decision. They've even done studies that the body's stress signals will pick up that something's wrong way before the intellectual mind makes a decision to do something about it. So your body holds on to the memories of your lifetime. And unfortunately, your body isn't your higher brain, so it can be re-traumatized, and there will be a physiological response, and that physiological response leads to an emotional response, and the emotional response leads to automatic beliefs and limited beliefs and behavior patterns, and so on and so forth. So 100% that is true. There are all different kinds of techniques, whether it's EFT or NMDR or what have you, meditation. It takes time, it takes courage to work through these physiological responses so that you have access to the courage and love that is really there. The more you do it, the easier it gets. But yes, for everyone, this is true, and especially true if you've had trauma. However, it's not a death sentence. You can do something about it. It just takes time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Selhub. We can't tell you enough how much we appreciate your virtual visit with us today. You've left us with obviously a lot of work to do to continue to improve ourselves and how we respond to all of this stimuli that is right outside of our doorstep. Let me introduce now the Associate Vice President for Student Life and our Dean of Students, who will make final comments, Mr. Aaron Burgess. Aaron?
Thank you so much. I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed that conversation. I wish we had a little more time to keep going, but I understand everybody has a schedule that they have to keep to. I'd like to start by thanking President Covino and the First Lady, Dr. Debbie Covino, for your insightful opening remarks. And also our Vice President, Bill Pondo, for serving as our moderator. It was absolutely amazing. Behind the scenes, our colleagues are the best. A lot of people work behind the scenes, and I want to thank them for making this seem seamless. And once again, Dr. Selhub, thank you so much for joining us in this virtual space for the rich conversation on these such important matters surrounding stress and resilience. More importantly, I would like to thank you, our amazing Cal State Los Angeles Golden Eagle community members, for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us and for asking thought-provoking questions regarding these important topics. I hope you're able to identify tips and tools to help you manage the day-to-day challenges we all face from time to time. As a reminder, in case you've missed any portion of today's show, or would like to just review it again, as I will in a matter of time, a recording of this webinar will be available on the WellBeingU website in the very near future. In addition, additionally, look out for upcoming WellBeingU Speaker Series events in the upcoming months. And if they're anything like this, they should be just absolutely amazing. Also, please take note of the website and phone numbers that we will share with you shortly regarding services available to assist students, faculty, and staff with valuable information regarding your well-being. Once again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day.